sidestep and a jam by Wemby.
This is the Morning Huddle on 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star with Rob Thompson and the managing editor of Blogging the Boys, RJ Ochoa. Now, here's Rob and RJ.
Hey, huddle up. We got a bunch to talk about. It's the Morning Huddle here on San Antonio Sports Star. Every day at 7 a.m., we do the same. We're glad you're with us. We talk silver and black. Make sure you are subscribed to the appropriate channels there and liking on the regular basis and sharing with friends and family and those that you love. Spurs just about done. They're in Memphis tonight. I will say this, and I can't get it off my mind, and I'm going to be thinking about it until draft day. I don't know how the Spurs can manufacture this, but I want them to go get Zach Edey. I do. I'm going to stay on this as we look at what we're going to see tonight with the Spurs, minus Keldon, who's got his sprained foot that he's been dealing with the last couple of weeks. He hurt it again on Sunday against the Sixers in that, defensive struggle against Tyrese Maxey. I want Zach Edey and the defense. I know that he got wore out last night, and, by the end of the game, he was, just exhausted. But for a brief shining moment there in the first half, I saw the potential. So when we think the Spurs tonight in Memphis, they're going to go up against a team of Jaren Jackson and not a lot of tall dudes, defensive-minded guards, no Ja Morant. I mean, they're kind of dealing with their own issues, but all I can think of is the defense that Edey could add. The weakest link in the Spurs is their horrific defense. He isn't a number one pick. He's not even a top 10 pick. But he is the kind of pick the kind of player that, man, as this season is done, and I go, is there immediate help anywhere in college? I look at that cat and I go, you know what? I see what Wemby's doing, and you brought it up earlier, RJ. The number of blocks. Well, double that.
I don't think you can double that.
Well, what I'm saying is double that potential and put that out on the court and literally say the only way you're ever going to beat us is shoot 40% from three, because that's what you're going to have to do.
That's true, and that's possible, certainly in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, I would welcome it. I'm not ready to move heaven and earth to make this reality happen the way that you are. You're ready to sell your soul.
In this lousy draft, I'm like,
I think you're diluting the draft too much. Just because it's not a great class doesn't mean it's worthless. And so, that's the point we're at. Again, he can totally offer something, but I almost am at a place where I don't want to, dilly-dally around and experiment with Zach Edey and can he be an NBA player while we're in the middle of this peak window, while the alien is here.
And it is an interesting time to be alive because we do get to see the reformation of something special. We thought we had begun it before, we hadn't. Now we are. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Now we have a pretty firm grasp of who Victor is and what he wants to be and how he wants to play and how he wants to be coached and the way he travels and all those things that matter when you're putting together the pieces of a cohesive team. So now we have an idea, and you look at a guy like Edey, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and they are in a situation where I heard Don say it yesterday, Don Harris on News 4. Well, yes, they're fighting to avoid the infamy of the worst team in franchise history, but the teams that they were fighting with were so bad by now. They were, last year by now, the Spurs were a difficult watch. I mean, yikes. This year, at least they're better. They're better than their record. They really are. They're
at this point in the season.
Yes, by their play, and they're playing against teams that are as god awful as the Spurs have ever been. So a lot of these are gimme games. But the fact of the matter is, they're not playing so terribly that you're looking at the third or fourth pick, which is where the Spurs are imminent, and you go, God, is there any help? Because, we kind of have an idea where the help needs to be, the kind of help we need. Not just anything coming off the assembly line is perfect because we got nothing else, which has been kind of like the last couple of years. This year, we can be very persnickety and very, very, pinpoint exactly what we're chasing because we know where we're at. And with that, you go, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. There is no superstar in this draft. You got some that are going to be ready sooner than others. You got some briskets, and you got some steaks. Which one are you chasing? But the Spurs look to be aiming toward a brisket. I'd rather have a steak.
I would rather have a steak, but if your version of a steak is Zach Edey,
I'm just talking draft. I'm not talking free agency where you can go get it, but in the draft, a brisket, I don't want to wait anymore. Alex Sarr ain't going to be crap for 3 years. He's just not.
I know that you're talking only draft, but you can't just do that. And I know you know that.
Yeah.
The context of the whole conversation really matters. And so everything about from now on, we're done ordering brisket for a very, very, very long time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
we no longer, we're getting rid of the slow cooker. We're throwing out all the crock pots. We're getting rid of the smokers. We just want George Foreman grills in this house. We want Ninja grills. We want food ready instantly.
Microwaves, man.
Exactly. That's where we're at. That's the template that we are kind of living and thriving in for the next, hopefully, 15 years.
And I'm not dead. You're right. I'm not dead against this Sarr kid. I'm not. I think the guy's got a lot of skill, but he kind of brings to the table a lot of what we already got, and that's pretty devastating.
I mean, you just have the potential. A crush, and you really want to find a way to get Zach specific.
Well, you know why? I'll tell you, and it's not Zach specific. Because I'm still an old head when it comes to basketball. I am. And I'm not opposed to the modern with, things changing. But I do know, just like when, shameless plug, when I talked with Dr. Torres at the Institute for Functional Health, the first time I sat down with him, he was like, I'm not going to BS you. To lose weight, it's less calories than you burn more than you take in. That's at the end of the day, that's it. It's not a hard formula. It's just how we adapt your life to do that. Basketball is the winning formula is pretty basic. Get more rebounds, make more shots. Okay. One or the other or both. You're going to win. And how do you manufacture that? Well, have guys that are so close to the rim, it's hard for them to miss. That's still tried and true. And if I can go get another 7-footer who likes it in the paint, who isn't asking for anything other than a couple of crumbs and a high pick and roll, and I can pair that with a Victor Wembanyama, and I can get him for pennies for a late first rounder. It just seems to me not a lot of teams are in the situation that the Spurs are. And I like the idea of that. Sarr could be exactly like Wemby, and we have it on both sides of the court and can be mobile and blocking shots too. But I like the big anchor. I'm an old head, and I like what I saw last night. I loved the game last night because it was the way basketball God intended it to be. No, I'm kidding.
But I think that what last night is representative of is that, UConn let it be the Zach Edey show. And Purdue lost, and they lost handily.
Others. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't, you can very easily diffuse. Now, you put Zach on the same floor as Wemby, and it's obviously a different conversation.
Think about, it's not David and Tim. It's not. But think of the defensive kind of, oh my gosh, back at what it was like back in 99 and 2000. When you rolled in and you knew that night you had David and Tim, 7-footers out there. Both of them love to block a shot. They do it in different ways. And you had to defend 2 posts and 2 power forwards all night long. It was impossible. And then they were good together. And I just envision that because they were 2 different types. Timmy was the big, back to the basket, like the moves, like the drop step, like the bounce pass, like the bank shot. David was always the modern version, man. He liked to face the basket. He liked to go downhill. He liked to come from the weak side and block a shot. And damn, the alley-oops were beautiful. Well, I see that, and I see Victor in the role of David, not in the same offense, but in the same style, playing downhill, using that given beauty. And then you put a lamppost in the middle of the paint. And your defensive issues, the Spurs are so god-awful. You build in not safety nets, you build in walls behind you. Yeah, you get beat off the dribble. Well, take it. The only way you're going to beat us is threes. You can dribble all to the paint all you want.
I think
it's possible. It's possible. Forgive me. On the day after the season is done, let me bask in this gravy that was greatness last night.
It isn't even gravy. It's the leftover part of the chicken fried steak that after you're done with the meal, like the leftover breading.
No,
you know
man,
what I'm saying?
he was in the first
He
quarter.
was awesome, Rob, but he was
Holy-
awesome in the NCAA tournament. And you're talking about an entirely different world at this point.
I
in time.
understand. And Claymore, a good listener, great comments always, brought something up on the Brigade Bar a minute ago. And he's right. He is a spot player. He is a 20-minute, 25-minute night a guy. That's what he'll be. And there's not a lot of teams that can afford to spend the capital on a guy like that because they need a starting post to do all those things. Well, we already got a guy on the court. And if you time the minutes out right and have him in at appropriate times, it would be a thing of beauty. I don't want to waste a high draft pick on him, though.
You're over here like, if you time the minutes right and if you do it exactly the way that it needs to be done, and if if the solar eclipse is happening that particular day, then it can totally work.
No, we're talking.
No,
isn't that. I'm not talking about some sort of extreme rocket science formula to make it work together. I'm just acknowledging the obvious. Wemby only he's averaged some more minutes as the season has gone on. But Wemby's a bit of an Iron Man. That guy doesn't get a lot of rest. He has to get his wind at the free throw line and waiting for rebounds. So they're both capable. But I know what a guy like that for peak effort, you're only going to get it about 8 minutes at a spurt. And you're going to have to sit him down for a while. And with those rotations, you're probably only going to get him for 20, 25 minutes a game. That
fine. Sounds horrible.
No,
I mean, that sounds...
But we act like every first-round draft pick is a hit. And they're not.
But they're also not lottery tickets that just burn on the hot flavor of the moment.
I think the Spurs are past best player available, and it's now finding the guy that fits. And that's where I
no
think
way. How can you possibly say that?
Because that's what the draft has to be. The real meat's coming in free agency. Yes, a draft is a 3-4 hour prospect. We just talked about it. And they're not going to go get the steak because Zach Edey is not good enough for where the Spurs are drafted. And I don't think they're going to move down. And they're not going to try to get him at 4. That'd be stupid. But what I'm saying is I like the idea of a big dude like that. And if you're going to go get Alex Sarr, who's a 7'1" mobile Wemby, that's great. But we just talked about it. It's going to be 4 years. So if I'm going to get somebody that's just going to fall off the apple cart and I'm not going to have to pay much, I'd almost trade out of that position because we're going to have to wait for Sarr. He's not going to be ready in the time frame that we hope to have Wemby ready because everybody's telling us, including Wendy and all the guys that know, suddenly we're on fast forward.
There's a lot of declarations happening here that Sarr isn't going to be ready. And the presumption here is that Edey is going to be like ready now.
Well, the thing is, I know what
Edey can land in the NBA and compete with the bigs that we see dominate. The bigs that dominate Wemby as is. Embiid worked Wemby, and you're confident that Zach Edey can come in and hang on for the ride.
Because he's a different player. Yes, I do think Edey is a far more appropriate player to guard a guy like Embiid, a guy like Joker, than Wemby is, because he is a space heater. He takes up space and forces the other post to utilize other space. And that's the way you defend these guys, because you're not going to just D them up. They're too good, but make them go places and be places where they're not comfortable. And that's all you can hope for. And if you got a guy that's 7'4", that you ain't going to muscle out of the paint, and I know that's going to happen tomorrow. He is that big and that dominant. That will move directly into the NBA. You know why I know that? Did you see what Walker Kessler did from Auburn a couple of years ago? Walked into Utah, had a 20-rebound game. He couldn't hold Edey's jock. So that style is possible in this day and age.
I think you're just trying to build the Spurs a very specific way.
Yes, I am.
But that's like you're purposefully putting tunnel vision on yourself. That this cannot be about that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I completely disagree with the notion that the Spurs are in a position to now, like, just add the finishing touches. They're just, they can go carve out the exact role that Zach Edey provides. They have nothing of note to work with outside of Wemby. They have some things that we like. Obviously, Keldon and Devin have proven their worth, and Jeremy, and those are ancillary parts that can totally be used in certain capacities. But they are not in a position in any kind of way at any point in the draft to just draft this dude that might play this serviceable role 25 minutes a night. Like that's a rich man's kind of problem that the Spurs are not in the position to have themselves.
I completely disagree with the way that you analogize this, because the way I look at it, that I know exactly what Zach Edey is. This isn't messing around. I don't have to forecast that if he grows into his body, he's going to be this. This is him, and this will be him for the next
This is him
8 years.
at the college level. It's a very different thing.
What he does will translate, man. I've got precedent. I've seen it happen with guys that play the same game but aren't nearly as good. I'm talking about the 2-time Naismith Player of the Year who was successful in the crucible of the tournament finally. But last year he was not. This year he made it through the Big Ten, through the tournament as the focus. 3 dudes hanging on him, and he kept coming. It just showed me that he's NBA ready. Is he going to be a superstar? Never. Will he be a functional NBA player for a decade? Yes. And if you can find that in the first round, you draft it. Now, maybe not in the first 5-8 picks, but in this year's draft, which some GMs call literally the worst in NBA history, beauty is in the eye of the beholder now. There ain't nobody people preaching saying if you pass on him, you're going to get fired. Now's the time where GMs are made.
To go.
At 20th,
He is projected
25th?
to go somewhere. So CBS has him going 22nd to the Pelicans. USA Today has him going 26th to the Wizards. Bleacher Report has him going 30th to the Celtics. NBA Draft.net has him going 37th to the Grizzlies. And you're over here saying like, oh man, this is the franchise-changing presence to show up and pair with Wemby.
How many other guys in this draft are, though? What I'm saying is if there was a preeminent
clearly
dude, I go,
at least 20. At least 20 dudes are more valuable.
This is matchmakers. What we're looking at now is an old grandmother going, he's handsome, she needs a husband. Let's put those two together. This doesn't take into account a personality, needs, things that fit. The one thing the Spurs have that nobody in this draft has is a clear idea of where they're going. And everything they do from now on has to match what we now know Wemby to be. We didn't know that last year. Now we know. So we have the freedom of going, this is what fits, whether we get it through the draft or we get it through the free agency, whatever we're going. We know there is some benefit to knowing this is where we're going, and we know what hasn't worked, which sadly might involve some of the guys that aren't playing tonight.
I respect that you have a crush. I really do. And I'm really happy for you. It's an enthralling emotion to kind of be in the middle of, and it's springtime, you know what I mean? You hear certain songs, you think of Zach. You see certain things, you think of Zach. You taste certain foods, you think of Zach. Baby. And I'm happy for you that you're experiencing this emotional ride. But the best decisions are never made under emotional compromise. I mean, you are this is a cute thing that you're in the middle of, but I think you just need to take a breath. You know what I mean? You need a sip of water.
You mark my words. Mark my words. He won't do it as a Spur because, unfortunately, they're not in a position to get him. But if they were, or whoever does get him, he's either going to be Taco Fall, which I think he's better than Taco Fall. Offensively, he's got more. Or he's going to be, for a brief shining moment, kind of like what Boban was for the first couple of years in his career.
So let's chase the brief shining moment, and let's hope the brief shining moment aligns with the timeline that the Spurs are in. What a foolproof strategy.
In hindsight, you pull a Boban out of the first round, you're a happy GM. I'm not kidding. Look at who the Spurs have taken with the lottery picks. Lonnie Walker is barely hanging on in the league. I mean, first round after the top 3 or 4 is a crapshoot. So, and that's when you have a defined hierarchy of goodness to greatness where it is obvious. There's no question who the top 2 or 3 picks are. This year, it is a crapshoot. It is so bad for the draft that all you ever see now is Euros in the top 4 or 5 because they're not quantifiable. There's not one dude out there that is so obvious. There's not. So if it's nobody and somebody from CBS is telling you number 1, but somebody from Fox is that same dude as 8, who the hell are you to tell me who to draft? Nobody.
I think that you need to cool off.
I hope Mr. Wright and Mr. Buford are listening on the way in, as I'm sure they are.
You need to cool off, and you need to take a breath. And if you still feel the same way after that, okay. You might come back and say, yeah, I was a little in the moment.
And
Jason, that's okay.
You're right. And at the end of the day, Jason Mahay on the Brigade Bar hit it on the head. A true center would truly immensely help the Spurs. A guy
Sure.
that's job is in the paint. It doesn't have to be Edey. He's just the
Absolutely.
guy in front of me. That's the guy, Mr. Wright, Mr. Buford.
And
Those are the guys.
That all hinges on what you want to do with Wemby, as we've discussed many times.
Mhm.
Do you want to play him at the 5, and do you want to just have
He's
that
not.
kind of be your? Well, I mean, it's
I
still
know.
an option. on
I'd
the
rather
table.
him do
But-
that, but it's not going to happen.
Right. So if he's staunchly opposed to that, then this becomes a world that you have to legitimately explore. So there is still a little bit of uncovering in that process that's involved here. But other than that, okay.
Dominic Barlow is an adequate dude, though. I will give him some love. That guy has earned some time. More with the Spurs.
Spurs are 3.5-point favorites tonight.
I like it. I think the Spurs are going to get it tonight. Again, we're going to prove something, and I don't have enough of a sample size to figure out why. But I think we're going to get another night of a team looking very free-flowing on offense, cohesive, and that it's going to lead to some turnovers, but it's led to some fun offense. I think we're going to see more of that. And Devontae Graham, man, the guy's been a revelation the last couple of weeks. I can't wait to see him play again as he tries to round himself out for a next season contract. Hey, we're always talking Spurs, and you ever have anything to say about it, it's easy to. You can reach out to us on our YouTube feed. That Brigade Bar is something special, and if you got something to say, easy there, or you can call us 656-3776, 656-ESPN to you and me.